Have you been struggling recently, facing some tough times and need something to pick you up and make you say, you know what, maybe life isn't all that bad? Well, the new Stormender launcher in Modern Warfare 3 is not going to help you at all. As a matter of fact, this might be the most useless gun ever added to a Call of Duty game, and I love it. This potato makes the Colibri from Battlefield 1 look overpowered. The in-game description for the Stormender launcher is described as a state-of-the-art weapon system that fires a localized EMP on a slight delay, destroys tactical and lethal equipment, and temporarily disables other electronic devices. But this is what the description should really say. I think it's also worth mentioning that this launcher has no unlockable attachments to make it stronger. Nice. Warzone. Yeah, so just to save us all some time, pretty much everything that I tested for multiplayer is going to apply to Warzone as well for the Stormender launcher. And since most people are out there sweating to win with meta builds in Warzone, I'll tell you right off the bat that this thing has no utility or purpose in Warzone whatsoever. At best, you can use this to destroy some low tier kill streaks, but aside from that, it is quite literally dead weight on your class if you equip it, and not just the dead weight teammates that you're playing with. Multiplayer. So to get a better understanding of what this launcher is supposed to do, we need to do some rigorous testing. The first thing that you need to know is that this gun effectively does no damage to enemy players. At normal health in core, if you shoot an enemy with this launcher, it does nothing. At 30 health in hardcore modes, this launcher also does nothing. But hear me out, if you go to a private match and set the health to just 1 HP, this launcher will still not kill anyone. When I was testing this launcher with my wife, we were goofing around and we were like, hey, since this thing shoots an EMP and it seems to have kind of like a lightning effect, what happens if you shoot the water? And this is what happened.
I just EMP'd you.
Yeah, it's not doing anything.
Look how cool that is.
It does look really cool though, yeah. Well, shoot me directly. I don't even know if I have footage of that. Let's have a fight to see who can kill who faster. Wait, I'm actually dying. What? I thought this thing couldn't do any damage.
I'm doing headshots.
I am too.
I'm not taking any damage.
I think I might be. Somehow. My screen's like kind of gray right now. Yep. The first ever kill with it! Wait, but it didn't give you a kill. It didn't give you a kill. What? This thing's so bad it couldn't even count that?
I guess not.
Oh my god. And it even shows it in the kill cam. This is so disrespectful. What? Oh my god, I went right back in the water. It didn't even give you a kill. Yeah, so this is what we're working with. We are dealing with a launcher in a Call of Duty game. And again, I don't have the exact values, but it seems like it's basically doing like 0.01 damage per shot. It is possible to kill an enemy who is at 1 HP that can somehow not regenerate their health back. So if you somehow manage to get an actual kill with this thing in multiplayer, you have just struck the Call of Duty lottery. Unless, of course, this launcher gets a buff, there's a pretty good chance that this will never happen again. Now, I already know there's gonna be that Melvin out there watching this who's like,
Actually, Eric, this weapon is meant to take out kill streaks. It is a support weapon.
Okay, simmer down there, buddy. If we look at some of the other launchers we've had in previous Call of Duty games, like the RPG, the Javelin, the Stinger, they all have the potential and the ability to actually damage and kill enemies. Now, obviously, some launchers are stronger than others. I mean, look at the RPG. Not literally, because I don't know if I'll have gameplay of it, but you guys already know, typically RPGs in a Call of Duty game, you can free fire them, and they can destroy kill streaks, although they're pretty inaccurate, and it's hard to do, but more often than not, you're gonna use it to blow up enemies. Whereas if you were to use the Stinger in older Call of Duty games, it can only lock onto kill streaks, but sometimes it can be misguided and it can still hit enemies and damage them and kill them. It's obviously very hard to pull off, but it is doable. And that's what makes the Stormender launcher uniquely horrible. It can be used to take out kill streaks, but it cannot be used to kill enemies in its current state. So now the real question is, how effective is the Stormender against kill streaks? Hopefully, I'm showing you guys how effective this thing has been against enemy kill streaks up until this point. And one thing you'll immediately notice off the bat is that the Stormender is actually not that bad against low-tier enemy kill streaks. Things like UAVs and counter UAVs get taken out relatively quick with the Stormender. And even some of the mid-tier enemy kill streaks get taken out somewhat easily with the Stormender. But the second we start to move on to the higher tier kill streaks, like the Chopper Gunner, the AC-130, and even the Swarm, it is able to take out some of these high tier enemy kill streaks, but then some of them, like the AC-130 and the Swarm, it's gonna be almost impossible to effectively take those out.
Why are you yawning?
Yawn.
God, still yawning.
Yawn.
Oh, the head came off.
Yawn.
Maybe now I can kill you.
Yawn.
Wow, that was close. It was close. And honestly, this is a massive disappointment for a launcher that can really only be used against enemy kill streaks and equipment. And by the way, I didn't test equipment because I have no doubt that you can point this thing at an enemy claymore and blow it up. Come on, guys. We're not 3 years old. But testing this thing against some of the best kill streaks in the game was definitely worth our time. Okay, maybe that was not the best wording. It wasn't worth our time. It was a waste of time because this thing is not that good against the most powerful kill streaks in the game. But hopefully our testing will save you guys some time. My main takeaway from testing the Stormender against kill streaks is this. It's pretty decent against taking out some of the weakest kill streaks in the game, and since it does have unlimited ammo, you will not run out. So if you have this thing on your back, it can always be used to quickly deal with some of the weaker enemy kill streaks. But if you weren't aware, most guns that you already use in the game can deal with enemy kill streaks like this very quickly. I think the prime example in recent Call of Duty games is the counter UAV, because they're relatively easy to find in the sky, and almost any gun can take them out with a couple of bullets. So realistically, if you wanted to use the Stormender to destroy counter UAVs, you don't really need to. There's a pretty good likelihood that the weapon you're using right now will do a better job anyway. One thing that I also noticed from testing is that when you shoot an enemy player with this, it does say that you have EMP'd the player. But as you can see here, when I get shot, it doesn't affect my character whatsoever. I could barely even tell that I was shot by this thing, which is pretty funny because it just, again, goes to show how useless this launcher really is. The description says that it fires a localized EMP, but when you're actually hit by it, it barely even seems like a gust of wind has breezed past you. It's a joke. Now, thankfully, if you look at the camo challenges for the Stormender, you will notice that there's no requirement for you to actually kill enemy players with the Stormender. But right off of the bat, this launcher only has one base camo challenge, and you have to destroy 25 pieces of enemy equipment, much like the RGL-80, which means that, yes, you're probably gonna have to go into free-for-all and ask for people to put down claymores or prox mines, because I'm sure that this camo challenge is also just as buggy. Thankfully, once you get that done, it's mostly just gonna require you to take down enemy kill streaks, but man, since the Stormender camo challenges will most likely be just as bugged as the RGL-80 is, this is not gonna be an easy gun to get interstellar camo for, if you even wants to do that. But that'll pretty much wrap it up for how the Stormender performs in multiplayer. Now let's move on to zombies. Just like Warzone in multiplayer, the Stormender is kind of a letdown, but thankfully, not as much. Because you see, before I even loaded into a match, I wanted to know what the zombie camo challenges were going to be. And the game does require you to get kills with the Stormender, which right off of the bat confirms that this is an unlimited ammo launcher that actually can kill zombies. So it can't possibly be bad, right? Well, here's the thing. Initially, the Stormender seemed pretty useless in zombies. It was barely dealing any damage, and it's really only good for slowing enemy zombies down. This could have some utility in zombies, but the main drawback is that if you're fighting higher tier enemies, like bounty target boss enemies, it doesn't seem to have the same slowing effect. But against the more typical zombies that you'll see in the game, it's not too bad for forcing them into a slow-mo montage. But if you need to actually kill zombies to get your camo challenges done, it is still pitifully weak when you're starting out. I even used a rare Aether tool on my Stormender, and it really didn't help the damage profile that much. The only other kind of positive I could try to find for this thing is that it does maintain unlimited ammo, just like in multiplayer and Warzone. And honestly, the range in the hitbox is pretty nice. You can shoot zombies from pretty far away, and you don't really need to precisely shoot at them. When I first loaded into the match, I was really focusing on trying to precisely aim at the zombies and even try to get critical kills, but that's not really how you should try to use the launcher. I don't even think you can get critical kills necessarily. You know what I mean? Like, aiming at their toes versus their head doesn't seem to make a difference. As long as you're pointing this thing in the general direction of a zombie, it's going to damage them. And it also seems to deal a flat damage rate. So for example, if you see a group of zombies together, you can actually take down multiple of them at the same time, as long as they're somewhat close to each other and not too spread out. But what frustrated me the most about trying to use this thing was I started an escort contract, and this was only tier 1. And while this thing was able to slow down the manglers, the amount of enemies was getting overwhelming because this thing was just not killing them fast enough. And I did have a secondary weapon that I was pulling out here and there, but I was still just trying to get kills with it for the camo challenge, and also to see if it was going to be competent for completing a tier 1 contract, right? But like I said, the amount of enemies was getting too overwhelming, and it cost me an airstrike as well as both of my self revives. Now, part of that was because the amount of zombies was getting overwhelming, but I did also unfortunately airstrike myself. I didn't think it was that close, but I guess it was. Thankfully, I was able to recover in this situation, but I could have easily just died and lost everything in in this match. And I would highly recommend going in with a second weapon that actually has some good killing potential so you don't lose everything. But yeah, so far for zombies, the Stormender is seeming better than multiplayer and Warzone. But what actually surprised me quite a bit was when I pack-a-punched the launcher. Typically, when you pack-a-punch a gun in Call of Duty Zombies, it will get significantly stronger, it can buff the magazine size, and it can even give some weapons new unique traits. So, what happens when you pack-a-punch the Stormender? Dude, it's basically the same exact gun. But now it's dealing some actual damage and not being totally useless in terms of killing potential. Immediately when the Stormender was at blue tier rarity and pack-a-punch level 1, it was finally able to clear the tier 1 zombies. And honestly, if you do want to go into zombies and use the Stormender and get your camos done, I would highly recommend pack-a-punching it every single time and trying not to use the base version of it. It's just going to frustrate you so much because its killing potential is worthless until it's pack-a-punched. But just as a fair warning, when I took it to the tier 2 zone and I got pack-a-punch level 2, it was immediately starting to struggle against the tier 2 enemies. And I'm pretty sure if you try to use this thing in tier 3, it's just gonna be GG's. So overall, my takeaway for the Stormender launcher in Zombies is this. If you get the right upgrades and you use it properly, it actually has some really good utility in Zombies. As a prime example, if you pick up an insta-kill, this thing will instantly delete anything around you and you won't run out of ammo. And technically, this makes the Stormender one of the more reliable guns in Zombies because you can't run out of ammo for it. But again, the major drawback is the fact that even if you upgrade this thing significantly, it just won't outperform any other gun, and you'd be better off saving your best upgrades, whether that's high tier Aether tools or pack-a-punch upgrades and stuff like that. You're better off saving that for guns that deal more damage. But yeah, that's the brand new Stormender launcher in Modern Warfare 3. While it might try to end a storm, this gun is a disaster of a launcher. In its current state, this is the worst launcher we've ever had in a Call of Duty game. Pretty much any other launcher has the ability to either kill enemies or take down kill streaks, and they usually excel at one or the other or both. But the new Stormender launcher does neither, and that's why I highly recommend you consider buying a shovel, finding a nice patch of grass, and burying this thing deep into the ground and never looking back. Enjoy your salad.
Outcome, Tango.